Today, Unplugged kicks off its new special series, Hot Ads of the Week. Hot Ads. Senior political producers Rob Hendin and Jill Jackson are going to join us each week to break down the good, the bad, and the downright ridiculous campaign ads that are going to be coming to you for the midterm elections. They'll be all over television very soon. You will find it hard to avoid them. So we will give you a heads up so that you can hit the mute button. Today, Rob Hendin joins us, and also the CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto. And Rob, let's start with you with a campaign ad from Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, whom we just talked to.
Well, yeah, it's called Independent, and let's take a look at that now, Bill.
Okay.
If they don't pass this, you are taking the first step, right?
I am. I'm already giving 5% of my salary and dedicating it to the public debt. We need to restore some fiscal discipline and take responsibility.
Ann Kirkpatrick cut her own pay and is pushing to cut congressional salaries until they balance the budget. Even broke with her own party to oppose the Wall Street bank bailout. Independent, like Arizona.
I'm Ann Kirkpatrick, and I approve this message.
Rob, how do you parse that? What do you make of it?
Well, it's interesting. We just had her on, Bill. You were talking to her about cutting her own pay, and now she's running an ad in Arizona. She's up for re-election. She's a Democrat, but you wouldn't know that from that ad. It starts off with her on Fox News, which is an interesting way to grab attention, and she says, I'm independent, just like Arizona, and it bucked her own party, but again, does not say that she is a Democrat. There's a lot of Democrats that are going to face tough election battle in Arizona, and she's one of them, and it's an ad. We've seen a lot of this around the country where Democrats who are in battle, they're not saying they're Democrats.
Right. It's just me. It's not me, the Democrat.
Yes.
All right, Anthony. She's the 1st District of Arizona. She won by 56% last time. Is she in trouble?
Maybe. You know, there's a lot of districts that the Democrats picked up in 2006 and 2008 when they made big gains in the House that tend to be a little more moderate, tend to be somewhat conservative, especially in a midterm election when the electorate does tend to get a little more moderate, a little more conservative. So it's maybe not surprising to see somebody try to portray themselves as an independent, and especially this year when Washington is so unpopular. Ratings of both parties are so unpopular, both the Republicans and the Democrats. So she can get that independent label to stick. You can clearly see why she would go that way as a strategy.
Okay, now let's take a look at this ad from Baron Hill. He's seeking re-election for Congress in Indiana, and he uses some real Hoosiers to attack his opponent on Social Security and Medicare.
I'm Baron Hill, and I approve this message.
First this.
Social Security is a Ponzi scheme.
Now this. Todd Young thinks Social Security and Medicare are social welfare programs.
Welfare? I worked my whole life.
Money from every paycheck went to Social Security. That's not welfare.
That's not welfare. We earned it.
If Todd Young thinks Social Security and Medicare are welfare programs, will he fight to protect them or take them away?
Todd Young is not for us.
All right, trying to scare people, is that effective?
Well, it's trying to scare people with real people doing that. It's interesting. We've seen a lot of ads this week where if you don't trust your member of Congress, maybe you'll trust your neighbor. And so we have some real people from Indiana who are taking on Todd Young, who's the GOP candidate over Social Security, which is kind of the third rail of American politics, an oldie but a goodie in terms of an election year scare tactic. That if the Democrats can't win on what they're doing, don't vote for the Republican because they'll take away your Social Security. Trying to paint some of the Republican candidates as extremist on issues like the social welfare programs and the economy, and it's something we're seeing a lot of so far.
So, Anthony, with the Republicans apparently riding a tide at this point, is that going to help the Democrats?
This raises a really key point to watch this fall, which is the senior vote. Now, in a midterm election, typically you see a little bit of an increase in the proportion of seniors who are voting, maybe 3, maybe 4 points, maybe even higher this year. And seniors weren't terribly thrilled with the health care reform law when we polled on it throughout its passage. So here you see maybe going after the senior vote, trying to keep them in play. If you're a Democrat, certainly trying to win back maybe some of them.
And particularly if you've got an opponent who is sort of on the Tea Party side of the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. And that's certainly going to be one of the dynamics as well. This idea of being too extreme or out of the mainstream. You often see that in campaigns, and I'm not surprised to see some Democrats trying to paint some of the Tea Party and some of the Republicans in that light, just as oftentimes Republicans try to paint some Democrats as too liberal, out of the mainstream.
All right, the final ad comes from the Club for Growth. That's a fiscally conservative political action committee, and they are taking on the Senate race in Pennsylvania, going after the Democrat candidate Joe Sestak.
It's very liberal to stick taxpayers with that $300 billion mortgage bailout. It's very liberal to vote for a massive energy tax that could kill jobs here. And it's very liberal to say that the $787 billion Obama-Pelosi stimulus plan should have spent even more. That's Joe Sestak's record. Very liberal. We can't afford Joe Sestak's liberal schemes in the Senate. Club for Growth Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Very liberal, eh? Scary?
Well, you just heard Anthony say that some Republicans are going to paint Democrats as extremists on the left. This ad from the Club for Growth uses the term liberal 6 different times. It's interesting because Sestak's opponent is a guy named Pat Toomey, who was the president of the Club for Growth when he was here in Washington. So the Club for Growth is a very pro-business, small government organization that is really going to be active in this race and a few other races like in California. And we're going to see a lot of these conservative organizations playing very hard in some of these elections, including Pennsylvania, primarily against Joe Sestak. And it's going to be something a lot of people are going to see, these outside issue groups coming in with ads.
Anthony, if the economy is the big issue, are the labels liberal and conservative going to mean anything?
Well, look, the liberal label, or trying to tie someone to the spending, is certainly going to be one of the keys here for the Republicans. The stimulus wasn't necessarily popular, and there's going to be plenty of folks who think that it didn't work. So to the extent that you can tie any member of Congress, even if he's not the incumbent senator, to the stimulus package or to large government spending, certainly that's going to be a Republican theme. I won't be surprised to see that throughout in a lot of races.
All right, Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much, CBS Director of Elections, and Rob Hendin.